All right, we're back with the favorite show no one's watching, Bodega Cats Comics. It's time again for our second episode on Celebrities Write Comics. Can they write? Is the writing good? Will you continue to read their writing? Who knows? But today we went with someone who's really known in the industry, has done voiceovers, has gone on rants at City Hall about comic books, and continues to be on Hulu, Netflix, and anything else you could imagine. And that is going to be, I was about to say the late and great Patton Oswalt, but he's not dead. He's very much alive.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about Patton Oswalt today. We're going to talk about the book Minor Threats and what we like, what we didn't like, what we hope to see, because I already saw in the pre-chat that we talked some good things about it, but we won't get there yet. Per usual, like, subscribe. We don't know how the algorithm works, but I also realize whenever I hit this like, subscribe button, it blocks whoever's on the bottom's face. So I apologize.
It's me. That's fine.
For you today. But maybe that's why we don't get subscribers, because we keep blocking your face and you're the biggest fan base holder here. So
what?
that could be it. And that is how Jose feels about the Goblin Queen. And now to your regularly scheduled program. For those of y'all that want to know what just happened in the last 10 minutes, go to the outtakes, because we're going to definitely cut half of this shit out. What we're here for today is to talk about Minor Threats by this gentleman, Patton Oswalt. So, yeah, outtakes. You can link to those here. Fuck you, Madeline Pryor. So, yeah. How y'all want to do this? Who wants to go first? I'll jump right in.
Go for it.
No, I picked it. I've always been a fan of Patton Oswalt. I think that, everyone, what is he? Voice of MODOK, right? He was on Parks and Rec as the gentleman who did the 13-minute MCU continuation before the MCU even completed. He's been on so many things I couldn't even speak to him, but the fact that he had written other books and now has an ongoing series with Dark Horse Independent, we were like, okay, what does this look like? How does it work? What can we do? Let's check it out. Let's read it. And the first image I'll go to is the cover image. And Jose, that was your image. Tell me what you were thinking. We got to. I keep covering you, man.
No, actually, no, it's good. Don't see me. I'm ugly. No, you know what? So I think one of the things I appreciate is, so we talked about what's his face last week, or what's their faces, and that was like a very I forgot that issue of Spider-Man already. That one shot, I forget it. But I think what I liked about this was that clearly, to me anyway, Patton Oswalt had some. He's clearly, I think he's a fan of comics, because that cover reminds me of other comics covers that I've seen. There's one, so that cover of like the fist. I recall seeing a cover, and I forget the issue now. I think it was like the Juggernaut's fist or the Hulk's fist over the Avengers or some shit like that. Like I feel like that's imagery that's been used before. The second image that I selected, that one at the bottom is to me very reminiscent of the Superman holding Supergirl image in Crisis on Infinite Earths, right? That's the first thing I thought of. And I didn't include this third image, but there's another image where dude is like laying. I don't know if he's laying on a table, if he's laying on a floor, but he looks like he's dying.
On the table, yeah.
And it reminded me of the Weapon X, like the first Weapon X, I think, limited series in Marvel Comics Presents, or maybe it was Uncanny X-Men, but it was like flashing back to Wolverine's heyday or his earliest beginnings as Weapon X.
There it is.
And that one, yeah. And like there's the scene of like
Bring
Wolverine.
that back up.
That one, yeah. So it reminded me of Wolverine being on the slab, so to speak, and he's being experimented on. And I think that imagery comes from like Marvel Comics Presents Weapon X, or maybe it's Uncanny X-Men when Lady Deathstrike has her first appearance. One of the two. But that's what I thought of. So I thought, between the cover, the holding of the other character, and then him on a table, clearly there's some like comic book inspiration here.
Yeah.
And it just intrigued me. Whereas, I was like, okay, so they must be comic book aficionados, fans,
Yeah,
right?
and he's written a few in the past. I think there's going to be his first ongoing.
Okay.
With the company. One of the things about that last page, and I'll see if I could add it in here somehow, that page is not only a moment in time, it's a flashback and an action sequence, right? They're like, oh, what happened? The Insomniac did this to him. Wait, the Insomniac never hurts people to really injure him. These blows had intent to do something. And each of the smaller frames that are in color, you see the blows given to him by the Insomniac, but then you also have the conversation that's happening in that point in time. So it's this one really good still image that has all these elements to it. And I thought that was super cool.
Yeah, I mean, I actually, you know, even from like the original cover, I'm pretty sure it is an homage to something else. I'm pretty sure we have seen that before.
Mm-hmm.
But for some reason, like I felt like when last week, you know, you had, even though Patton Oswalt is a comedian and stuff like that, and I know Seth Meyers and those guys are also comedians, but I feel like because Patton Oswalt has been in the comic book space for so long, right? He's done a lot of his comedy is kind of like based in like some comic. He's always thrown in some like comic humor.
He's a nerd straight up. And
he's just a straight up nerd. Like
yeah.
You said, he voices like MODOK. He's been in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. You know, he was one of the characters in the, he had a twin brother and all this other not crazy shit. So he's been in the universe, right? He's always been part of it. I believe he also did like a Batman little one shot kind of like short story kind of deal. So he's been in the game for a while, and so I had a little more confidence that it was actually going to be pretty good in the storytelling. And the artwork is actually pretty good in it. I'm not sure who the exact artist is, the interior artist, but it's pretty good. I actually like the artwork inside. At times it could be a lot, but it does give you a lot of information without words. Like you were saying, some of the pictures, you could see the background of like him getting the shit beat out of him, while you could see the current state of him just like, what the hell, dude? Yeah. And I do like that. I dug it. And you know, as it leads into the actual like story of, you know, the I guess the main girl, and they're kind of going into her backstory when she was younger. Now she's older, you know, running a bar, like, hey, this is where my life led me to, and stuff like that. And it's funny how this is kind of it's showing the view of the villain from their perspective, right? Not from the hero's perspective, because most comic books, that's usually how it goes, right? It's the hero's perspective, and then every once in a while you get a villain thrown in here, but you don't actually see it from their view. It's always like the view of the world looking at them, and not the other way around. And this way, it looks like it's the villains. Like these guys are like D-list villains and stuff like that, but you're looking at their world and like how they see like the heroes looking at them and shit like that. And it's like, oh, you know, so I like that perspective of it. So it's pretty cool. And going through the world building of it seems pretty interesting, how you can see what happened, how their civilization became how it is and stuff like that. And they're like, hey, you know, the heroes basically, you know, fought a damn kaiju, and they just basically dumped the body here, killed it, and they just left it. Didn't even decide to pick it up. And like, what the hell? So they had to basically build.
I'll bring that up. Yeah.
Yeah. So they basically built a building on top of it. They're like, well, whatever. You guys not going to clean it up. I guess you don't care about us that much. So it's like, we'll just build on top of it. So that was interesting to see that, like, even the heroes can be, you know, kind of jerks. Yeah. You know what I mean?
I was going to share, and as you speak to that, you brought up the image that I downloaded, put up on the screen right now. And there's a few things, right? There is this rendition of the Justice League. Like you see the Flash character down to the bottom left. You see his streak through the city. If you really pay attention on the bottom of those buildings, that's him speeding through whatever the Lantern character this is. And I don't know who this omnipotent person is, but apparently it's their Superman.
Yeah.
And the fact that you take these two genres and you say, okay, you fought a kaiju in the slums of the city, left it there. It mixes so many different elements, where if it were another comic book, they'd say, oh, it was a monster. For here, it was a kaiju specifically. And then you tie it to that. which I thought was good. And then the other piece, what was I going to say when you were talking about the world building, the idea that this Justice League, and I spoke to it earlier in the pre-show, where it's very similar to The Boys, where they copied character type for each of the heroes, but instead of villainizing them, they haven't done that yet. In a way, they didn't make them the assholes. They just said, hey, we're villains and this is what we do and this is the world we live in, and we still got to watch out for them because there's this game we play amongst ourselves. Like, you beat me up a little, I go to jail, I come out, I do the same shit. And then the main villain, who has now set out the superheroes on everyone, Stickman, he's pretty much the Joker of this world. And Insomniac, his little partner, got killed, so it's like Jason Todd's gone. And this is what happens if Batman really was like, yo, listen, this kid's a jerk. He ripped off my car, but I fucking love him. I'm gonna kick your ass. Like, that's what just happened. Yeah. There was another scene you talked about, Carlos, and I just want to bring it up. It was the prison cell. This like fisheye lens drawing is so dope to me. Like it was like almost from a selfie camera. It looks like a surveillance camera. Yeah. And I was like, oh, I really like that angle and the hold on the piece. I'm always talking about the art. Like, I'm always sitting here like the
art is, you know what, the art is what drew me in. So you know, last week's art was meh. This week's art was like inviting. It was colorful, it was bright. It intrigued me to read the story. Plus, like the sort of like various comic book references and nuances.
I dug it from, so obviously you have the narrator, right, who is pretty much the girl who was in prison looking at the picture of her daughter. And you get kind of like the flashback of her when she was younger with her mom, on their little heist, and, they're robbing banks and stuff like that. And I forgot what her mom's name was. But, she also has like this weird, I forgot her damn name. But they have like these random ass names and stuff like that. And her mom was known as like, some, weird villain.
They don't say her name really. They show it in that one photo frame. I got to pull it up because that's where it shows it.
Yeah, they show her name. They say her name. It's like Playtime or
she's Playtime. Like yeah.
So the daughter's name is Playtime. The mom's name was like Queen something or some shit like that or whatever. So you see the progression of like Play Queen. Yeah. So
Play Queen. Yeah.
So and then there's like, okay, so now she's in prison, obviously, because, she got older and she got locked up, stuff like that. So she's looking at a picture of her daughter and she's trying to get back on the straight and narrow. And it's funny as like she basically runs a bar for supervillains, right? Or, D-list villains or whatever, where they always come through and they always try to plot and scheme. And like you were saying, there's this like cat and mouse game between them and like the heroes, where it's like, hey, we rob a bank, we do something little, whatever, we get beat up a little bit and then we get put in jail and then we come back out and, we kind of go over. But then the stick man, actually crossed the line, killed a partner. And now all of a sudden the heroes, these D-list, villains are like, oh, before it was just like, hey, they beat us up a little bit, they lock us up, they let us out. And it's cool. Now this dude is like, yo, I'm like deliberately like hurting people to find this dude. And all these dudes are like, yo, we didn't have nothing to do with that. Like what's happening here? So they even, the villains even feel like shit, like this dude crossed the line, like we always had this, like this game that we played and everybody knew what to do and stuff. And now it's just like, all right, this dude lost his shit and like, we need to do something, because if not, he's just going to take out everybody.
Yeah. It was an interesting.
I thought that was interesting
opening. Yeah. Jinx. So what are we thinking? There was another thing. The last scene, Carlos, you brought this one up. We all talked about it. This is that villains unite.
Yeah.
I felt like, and it's really interesting because we only know enough about one character here to be excited, but not really. because there's all these other folks. You see her little creatures on the table, the toys she makes. Stickman is the guy on the bottom who the bear is scratching his face. But we have the gentleman who randomly jumped in and brought his boy. We don't know what his name is.
Yep.
We have the woman behind her who used to be a doctor, lost her license, now runs mob clinics.
Yep.
And then we have the OG dude with the handlebar mustache or whatever you call that.
Yep.
And he's broke. He gets free beer, and he's an old timer, so they like give him respect with the code. And then we got this guy on the right who was complaining at the beginning of the book, and we don't know. He just wanted to put his article on the wall, but we really don't know much about him either. So it's good. It's a great scene. It's dynamic, but I didn't know enough about people to be like, "Oh, I'm excited," but I didn't. That at the same time made me say, "Oh, I need to read the next book."
Yeah, yeah. It definitely drew me in. I'm hoping that they. Not too much, but at least they dive into like these other characters of past. Obviously, we got the main character like Playtime. We got her past. We got her present. Trying to do right by her daughter. And her baby daddy is like, dude, you need to do what your mom didn't do for you, and just like get the fuck out of her life.
That was a cold ass line right there.
That was pretty cold. But at the same time. Right when she went to go see her daughter, she got snatched up. Her daughter was like freaking out, like, I don't want to deal with any of these like villains or heroes or anything. She was just freaked out by it. So at the same time, you could kind of see where he was coming from with it. So it kind of sucked, where she's like, hey, I just want to see my daughter and stuff like that. And, she keeps getting roped back into this life where she said it. She's like, I'm good at it. I wasn't forced into it. I enjoyed it. I was like, I liked robbing banks, with my mom and stuff. So it's one of those things where, it is what it is, right? I mean, I don't know if it's, nature versus, whatever, nurture or whatever they call it. But, she enjoyed it, right? And at this point, by the end, she's like, all right, if we don't catch this dude, and basically kill him so we can kind of keep the peace with the heroes and get back to that, our whatever they had, like that truce, that kind of they had. If we don't take this dude out, they're going to wipe us off the map. Because obviously these dudes are a lot stronger than we are, or this one dude is just going to lose his shit. So
that's one of those, the enemy of my enemy is my friend type deal. So they got to now help the superheroes against their person. And they bring up the code a lot. So I want to see how the code plays into the rest of the book. And then again, the dynamic with the mom and daughter. So we got Playtime on the left and the queen on the right. And she's like, yo, I need money, moms. I was in jail 3 weeks. And she's like, so rob a bank. Like that's the nurturing side of her mom.
Yeah. And then at one, she was like after she helped and she gets out, like she gives her a hug, and she's like, the mom, she was basically like, the daughter's like, oh, thanks, mom, and the mom's like, yeah, he's like, you really want to help me? Just get my goddamn gun back.
Yeah,
it's like, all right. It's like, the lady's just like, I just want my shit back.
Yeah, that was Tyler Perry inspired. For those of you who do not know who Tyler Perry is, sorry, I can't help you.
What's that saying? Google is free. You know what? I'm not going to say that.
It's not free. They're listening to us all the time.
They are.
Yeah. Was there anything else?
Anything else? No. I did enjoy this book. I really loved. Again, you all were talking, and I just kept going back to the whole idea of like the supervillain bar. I love in comic books like these where like you get to, I don't know, see like sort of the human side of these like losers. That's what just like, and how they just like, commiserate and, contemplate their lives over like a beer. And this is like, this is not some groundbreaking thing. We've seen this. I don't want to call it a trope, but we've seen this in other in other series, other issues. Doctor Strange had, a series a while back, some years ago, where like all of the magic-based characters would congregate at this bar, this like mystical bar. Shaman from Alpha Flight, Magic, Scarlet Witch. Even as a matter of fact, in Scarlet Witch's new series, she's the owner of some mystical business, like in the middle of like in between dimensions, whatever. Anyway, but I just love that format as a way to like bring these like wild and goofy and sometimes mystical characters together in a space where their humanity shows up.
Mm-hmm.
And I always appreciate that. And I thought for this issue was really well done.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I was gonna share. It's like the bar in the Constantine movie or in Hellblazer, right?
Yeah.
Like you have that, and then even the other day, you and I were talking about Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and when you go to Lauren's bar to do karaoke, right? Like,
Yep.
you have that. So it's everywhere. The thing I liked about this one was the person behind the bar is oftentimes the wisest person, and there was no wisdom in there because everybody's just
yeah.
But it's just like, you know, it's like it's them just trying to like navigate life and try to figure all this shit out, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there was also you can also see that there was this. They also threw in the wealth gap, right? So there was one part where she's walking through the city, and it's like, okay, she's like, if Twilight City, which is where all the heroes are, you know, which is all nice and pretty and stuff like that, and it's supposed to be the center of, you know, their whole. It's basically the capital city. Wherever they live was like the Redport or whatever. It is basically like she basically said it's the malignant tumor growing out of someone's asshole, right? So like, and like the picture is just like you can see in the background, right in the foreground, you can see Twilight City, how like kind of nice it looks. The lights are bright, and then she's walking through her city, and it's just shit, crap everywhere. You know, homeless people, trash. There's a damn monster that's been obliterated on the floor, just left there, and you're like, what the fuck, like. Really, guys? Like, so you can tell, like, they don't give a shit about these guys. They're like, it's almost like that, you know, Hunger Games kind of deal is like, well, if you're in, you know, section 1, you're good. But if you're in section 12 or 13 or whatever, you know, we don't give a shit about you guys. You know, it's just fend for yourselves. And that's basically what they're doing, right? They're like, we have to fend for ourselves. We're always plotting and scheming to rob something because we ain't got shit, you know? So I dig that. They threw that dynamic in there as well. It's like, hey, you know, we're doing what we need to do to survive, even though we're, you know, these random ass villains. You know, we got to do what we got to do to survive. And I like I said, I dug the story. I thought it was pretty good. It was interesting.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. So, question: we asked this question at the end of reading the last book. We got to ask it again. Who's reading? Would you read again? If so, what would make you stop? That's the question I asked this time.
Would I read it again? And
would you read it again? And if you would, what would make you just stop reading it, knowing it's an ongoing series?
Oh, yes, I would read it again.
Okay.
What would make me stop reading it?
Yeah. Because I asked that because we just spoke about the tropes, right? Like, we compared it to several things. And I compare it to The Boys, but then I also take the Villains United from DC a few years ago when they came together. So it has all these things we've seen in the past. What will be different is the question I'm still asking myself. But there's been books I've read, independent, and I'll get to like issue 6 and I'm like, I'm done.
Yeah.
Felt like, yeah. But you normally get through like the first year is one arc with independent books too. Maybe even issue 8, they'll switch it and be like, okay, that's done. Go into the next thing.
Yeah. I think my whole thing's like, I definitely will read it again. And I will continue on just to see what happens. I think what would make me stop is if they move away from what they're doing, right? So I like when indie titles can break off from like mainstream, right? So like I know DC, Marvel, they have their limits of what they can actually write. You know, because you have your characters, you know, Batman, Spider-Man, all these like famous characters that you can't go too dark with them, right? Or you can't do something because obviously it's still for little kids and you just don't want to lose that, right? And obviously, you know, Disney and all these guys, Warner Brothers, they're not going to, you know, they're not going to have any of that, right? So you can't really go too dark with your characters. Whereas like with indie titles, they don't give a shit, right? And they're like, you know what, we're going to write a story to write a story. And if they continue with that and just write the story that they're writing, if they need to go dark, they go dark. then I'm in. If they, kind of pivot and go back to like those, like you said, those standard tropes that we know from like regular superhero titles, then it's gonna be like, all right, like it's gonna feel stale. But this feels like more fresh, right? Like I said, I like reading from the perspective of like the villain, right? And not even like a super villain, right? It's just like a D-list villain. But there's actual like major stakes involved, it looks like, right? They're like, hey, like we got a superhero that's, lost his shit. And it's getting pretty bad for us out here. So I dig that. And it'd be cool to see the other power sets, to see if, maybe they do something funky. Like I said, I like her power set where it's like, hey, her subconscious can, any material, she can create something, but it manifests itself as like a toy. You know what I mean? So, which is pretty funky. So, seeing like these, little random demon bears and little dolls and stuff like that holding knives and shit, and it's, pretty crazy. And so I think that's interesting, but hopefully it continues on that path. But I'm definitely willing to continue on with it.
No, I'm with it.
No.
I'll keep reading. The things I'm worried about the book turning into are probably just like the small repeated things. Will she make a giant mech robot out of trash in her city? Most likely. Will she get her daughter only for something more tragic to happen? Possibly. Will they kill Stickman like they intended to do, but before or after he goes after her daughter and her family, because there has to be some type of stake in there for her? And then after that, does it turn into a Yu Yu Hakusho championship contest to see who's going to be the next big bad in the city? Because there's a power vacuum, right? So that ends up being the next big thing. Oh, Stickman's gone. Somebody got to take his place. So these are the directions I see it going. But I feel that with the writer, right, we're talking about Patton, creative enough and funny enough and witty enough to maybe put some flavor to it that might be different. And yeah, the next thing that could also happen is aliens come down and they got to fight the aliens. So those are the things I'm looking forward to happening, just to see if the pattern repeats. But there's 4 issues out. The last issue just came out this week, I think. So we're 4 months in. Good variant covers. So we'll see what happens. I'm ready for it. How many meows we get, Jose?
How many who?
Meows.
Oh, meows. What's the rating scale again?
Whatever. We don't have one.
Oh. 1 to 5, I think.
On a scale of 1 to 5.
1 to 5 meows.
I would give it a 4 or 4.5. But 4.5 sounds weird because that means it's half a cat. And I don't know.
That's Schrodinger's cat.
Yeah. It's 4 adult cats and a kitten.
Okay, that works.
There we go.
You know what? I enjoyed it. It's almost it's not it's a near perfect issue. I really enjoyed it.
Yo, something has happened. Everybody, let's mark this as a momentous occasion. Like, subscribe for the first time that Jose liked something 150%. This is the first.
I like something like that.
We recorded it. Yeah, you were like, this is a 9.9. It's perfect. I'm like, 9.9 is not perfect, but it's good. I'll take that from you.
Hey.
That was good. That was good. So are you gonna buy that 1 in 100 art germ of Sins of Sinister? Because you like it so much?
The what?
That book you're reading.
There's a 1 in 100 virgin cover.
No, I'm good. Look.
That's enough. I'm good. I don't feel
like $150.
$150 for this book.
No, there's some really great artwork in the book. Again, I think they characterize Storm really well as being like this. She was on it. Like there's this whole plot of like Sinister very subtly manipulating the X-Men and creating essentially like a dystopian future based on his machinations, and the entire time
dystopian futures
the
best. Dystopian
futures. but it's not like the dystopian in the sense of like Days of Future Past. It's dystopian in that everyone's under Sinister's control. Society looks relatively the same except everyone's under Sinister's control, but the way like Storm was written, like she was smart, she was ahead of them, she suspected something, she couldn't trust any of the X-Men, and so she built in like fail safes in case she was ever compromised. Yeah. And there was a moment where Sinister attempted to compromise her, and that fail safe kicked in, and she was like, she just like let loose, and she called them abominations and flew off. And Sinister was like, "You say that like it's a bad thing, like you say abomination like that's a bad thing," but she again written as proving yet again that Aurora Monroe is probably the most indomitable X-Man ever.
Yeah.
Dope.
Nice. All right, Los, what's going on? I heard you went out and recorded some footage this weekend.
Yeah. So I just I recorded the home portion of it, showing the books that I got. So now it's just tying everything together. But yeah, I stopped off at a antique shop. So got some footage of that and picked up a couple of decent books, I think. So we'll see how it goes, but hopefully that should be the next one out. Hopefully I'll get that out, within a week.
Nice. We'll tag to that when that week comes, and by that time that happens, we'll be still at 20 viewers of this video. So the 21st viewer is going to get a good treat. We got a new intro for your show. Should we preview it here?
Yeah, go for it, man. Yeah, I haven't thrown it out yet. I was going to put it in my first video with it, but yeah, man. Let's do it.
I'm not gonna play it. I'm not gonna do that. I'm not gonna do that, Dan. We'll save that. That's the teaser right there. Come back. You'll see it. You watch his video, you watch our videos.
It only took 4 years and my brother's creativity to get an intro.
Well, that's what happens when I have to expel some energy. So yeah, again, I'm clicking this again. Like, subscribe, check us out. Stop letting this be the video that plays on your autoplay because you just walked away from your computer and let it run for 5 minutes. But that is us. Oh, I'm not doing much. I'm just hanging out. I'm working on this if I can and getting the screens and doing the graphics. I really want to focus. But I'm going to keep reading this book. I need to go pick up my books from the comic shop tomorrow sometime. Jose and I got to record a podcast for something else. But yeah, I'm gonna get back into fixing some things, but I can't press any more books because something's wrong with my fuse in the wall. So I'm dealing with that right now. So like the fuse blew a few times. I'll figure it out. We're the Bodega Cats. Whether you like it or not, we're here. We're gonna keep come back next time to see who we have. It might be a famous person who plays comic book characters that is a comic book character and writes comic book characters. I think that's what we're going to go for.
That's very meta.
Super meta. All the time. Peace out, y'all.
Later.
Bodega Cats Comics.
Meow.